Hey everybody, I'm just waiting on to see if people start coming in to watch. Anyway, this video is about why I do not believe in God. Well, my story that I have to tell here is not what people are used to hearing. I did not stop. Really, I never really believed in God. I was kind of stuck in the middle. Really, ever since I was 6 years old, I didn't really care. All I cared about was playing video games. And that was pretty much it. I still play video games a lot right now. Of course, there was a point in my life where I never imagined I would be making videos on the internet, guest appearing on different people's YouTube channels or Facebook pages. Never thought that was going to come down the pipe, but it did. My life is kind of different from what I thought it was going to be. But that's beside the point. If I remember correctly, it was about 2015 when the issue in question began. I was doing some research. I first did a bunch of research into a bunch of conspiracy theories. Then there was a day in my life where I got mad at the conspiracy theorist. I was angry. I was saying all kinds of crap about those people. I was really pissed because what I realized is the conspiracy theorist, in my opinion, was way worse than religion. These people have so many denominations of what they think is going on in the world. They can't even decide which secret society is trying to cause a new world order, and they can't even prove the latter's even happening to begin with. Anyway, is it the Illuminati, the Knights Templar, Freemasons, Skull and Bones, and I think there's another one called the Khazarian Mafia? Make up your damn mind, which one of them is it? Anyway. And then they have a bunch of different ideas about, reptilians are doing it. No, the Greys are. I'm like, or both. I'm like, which one is it? Anyway, that's related to what happened here, believe it or not. It is. I mean, there's no reason why anyone wouldn't believe it, but anyway. But I started thinking about the Bible all of a sudden. Like, okay, let's put all those conspiracy theories away and think about the Bible. Well, when I was younger, I was being told about the Exodus story. Jews are the chosen people of God. And this monotheistic faith. I thought it was very interesting. But, oh boy. Didn't see this coming. I started finding out about the God of War. Took me a little while to figure out which one it was as I was researching, but eventually, I think it was about a year later, 2016, when I was questioning the Bible. I was like, you know what, Jacob, maybe this is ridiculous. Not until I read Deuteronomy chapter 32. My most favorite chapter in the Abrahamic religion, whatever. The most favorite part ever in the Torah, the Bible, whatever the hell you want to call it. And it is chapter 32, verses 8 to 9 in Deuteronomy. Look it up. And In the Hebrew, it says, Ha Elyon. I don't remember the exact phrase, but he's like dividing the nations of the earth, and his son Yahweh or Adonai inherited Yaakov, which is Jacob in Hebrew. And I'm like, at that point, I've had it up to here when I saw that. I'm like, so you mean to tell me that your God has no parents? But Deuteronomy chapter 32, verses 8 to 9 says God inherited Israel. I had enough. So I'm done. Obviously, your own Bible is telling you that, and if you want to believe it is true, that your God has a superior God over him. It just admitted it. And that would mean something else, that God is not the ultimate judge. Because that's really what gets everybody fearing God, because they think he's the ultimate judge. But now that there's a God higher than him, now what? Another thing is, how could he inherit something that he created? That doesn't make any sense either. And then the Christians who are apologizing for those passages, because there are actually quite some scholars studying it. Not a whole lot, but there are some. There's even one scholar, he wrote lengthy passages in his book about Deuteronomy 32 verse 8 to 9. Mark S. Smith, look him up. Anyway, like I said before, how can God inherit something without parents, and how can he inherit a piece of land that he created? Makes no sense. Christians that look at those verses try to apologize for it and say that, well, God's a Trinity, so he's technically inheriting him from himself. I'm like, are you kidding me? Can somebody explain to me how can somebody inherit something from himself? That makes no sense. And by the way, for the record, the Jews don't have a Trinity and they don't have a Jesus. So that apologetic nonsense isn't going to work. Anyway, even in the Quran, I believe it's chapter 3, verse 180. Allah inherits the heavens and the earth too. Yeah, look that up and compare that to Deuteronomy 32, verses 8 to 9. Even the Quran is saying their God inherited. So the same contradiction that's in the Torah has made it in the Quran. Obviously, the people that wrote the Quran got that from the Torah. Or, the Christian Bible, since the Bible plagiarized a bunch of stuff from the Jewish Bible and added some new flavor to it. Anyway, so God inherits Israel. Exodus chapter 15, verse 3, the Lord is a man of war. So now not only does he inherit Israel, he's also a God of war. That makes sense, because throughout the majority of that damned book, there is war, death, and destruction, and he's obviously a big-time storm god too. And it's consistently throughout the book. Now some will argue, well, look at the New Testament. We're under a new covenant. That my head wants to boil when I hear that. I'm like, I can argue right now to you that the God of the New Testament is even worse than the God of Judaism. Because now not only do you have all the stuff that's in the Old Testament, now you got hellfire. So now you get judgment after death. And the absurdity of original sin. At this point, I'm like, okay, I'm going to research God's Father. I want to know more about him. So at that point, I didn't care if they were real, if these dudes were real or not, somehow, some way. I just want to know more about God's Father. In Hebrew, his name is pronounced Elyon. And when I researched more about him, I realized he was a Canaanite deity. There's a bunch of stuff in the Canaanite religion that they tell about him. El, or Elyon, whatever you want to call him. Mind you, if you try to research the same thing I'm researching, you'll find it might be a little pain in the butt, because there are different Canaanite gods called El. And you'll learn that on the way. There's actually a bunch of different Canaanite gods called Baal as well. They can get confusing, but eventually you'll get used to it, as I have, if you decide to research like I have. Anyway, back to the point. Elio never told anybody to worship me. Never threatened anyone with hell. He did not make women lesser than men. He did not condone genocide, nor ordered any such thing. He never chose anybody to be a special people either. I'm like, you know what? I like this dude. I wouldn't mind if he's real. I really wouldn't. And, you know, there are people out there, they try to say, well, these dudes aren't real. There are people on the other side of the fence saying they are real. And those that are saying they are real, well, they express it in different ways. You know, I put an example. Some people think the gods are aliens and they came down from the sky. They look at that and say, well, they came down from the sky. I got one thing to ask you. I'm not going to go too deep into it because I'll be getting off the point. One thing that's always creeped me out, well, not really creeped me out, but made me think differently about that was, well, how do gods look human so much? That's weird. They look very human to me. Like 90% of the gods and goddesses around the world are depicted looking human. Hell, even some of them are actually demigods that were literally people being deified into a god. So I'm like, that's something to think about for a second. Because I think it's safe to say that there's evidence to the contrary about their alien claims. You know, there are some other people out there that will want to say, well, maybe the gods are astrology or the planets or something like that. Well, my issue with that is, like, it didn't look like it started out that way to me, because it talks about how the gods emerged from the sky and they were beings of power that walked among humans, and they were deified. People thought they were powerful. That's really how it started out, because these gods did not originally create humanity. Did you know the oldest religion that we know of in the world is a big-breasted goddess, and I think she had like an orange and gray coloring to her. I don't remember where it was worshipped. I think it was in Europe, and I think it was also simultaneously in Africa. It was some kind of thick religion that spread out to those continents. I really don't remember. It's probably Europe. It doesn't matter where it started. The point is, there was no creation story. I found that very odd. People keep thinking gods and goddesses exist to tell people they give people explanations for how everything came to be. But the funniest thing is, the oldest religion that we know of didn't actually use them as an explanation for those things. It started out as power, the worship of power. I'm like, worship of power? Maybe these beings maybe they just had, I don't know, I'm just throwing crap out there. If you were to say that they're real, I'm not saying they are real, nor not. I'm agnostic about this. Agnostic. I classify myself as primarily being agnostic. So don't take this the wrong way, please. If you do, well, then that's your problem. Anyway, at this point, I'm like, so it started out as worship of power, eventually was used to explain how everything came to be. And at some point, they were obviously associated with the planets, because even the Romans, for example, they later in their culture associated the god Jupiter with the planet. But don't get it mixed up. The astrology and the theology, in this case, are two different things. But when they cross over, it's astrotheology. When they start mixing the stuff together, it's astrotheology. But yeah, people might find this strange. I don't believe because God has a father. He's like, what about the mass genocide and all the bad things God did throughout the whole Bible? I'm like, well, yeah, that's pretty bad, but the thing is, you'll notice that my advice to people is tell Christians, Jews, or Muslims about the specific verses I was saying. Deuteronomy 32, verse 8 to 9, and then you have, Surah Al-Imran, Surah Ali Imran, it can be pronounced either way, chapter 3, verse 180 in the Quran. Show them those verses, like your God is inheriting. because they primarily worship their God based on fear. They're not going to care about the genocide and all the bad stuff that occurred in their books. But if you tell them that you have a God higher than them, man, and you can actually show them in their own holy text, I'll raise some eyebrows. Because I have, with experience, I've seen this happen before. So, try it. I think you might have better results. If you try saying, well, your God is evil, like, he doesn't have the right to send people to hell, they'll just defend that damn thing. It's not going to work. Sometimes it does, not as often, because it's called the problem of evil. Okay, problem of evil. What got me not to no longer consider that God character was Deuteronomy 32, verses 8 to 9. That's what got me. That is the sole reason that I'm even here talking about this video. That's the sole reason for anything that I've ever done the last 4 years. It's because of those two verses. That's literally it. I found a lot more stuff that I will discuss in my future publications. And you all will see. I'll show y'all what I mean by this. That's all I have to say.